Speak what is true. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. I am found, I am yours, I am loved, I'm made pure, I have life, I can breathe, I am healed, I am free. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true, 'cause I am found, I am yours, I am loved, I'm made pure, I have life, I can breathe, I am healed, I am free. You are strong, you are sure, you are light, you endure, you are good, always true, you are light, breaking through. Oh, here's speak what is true. I am found, I am yours, I am loved, I'm made pure, I have life, I can breathe, I am healed, I am free, 'cause you are strong, you are sure, you are light, you endure, you are good, always true, you are light, breaking through, you my life.
we'll take a moment to be in silence. Put your hand on your heart. Take a nice deep breath. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, here's my life. Here's my opportunity to be centered, quiet, present in this moment. Using this opportunity to release the day. Thank you. Release our judgments, our fears, our concerns, and just be centered so that this time together can be a time of remembering our dedication to our spiritual path, our spiritual growth, a time of remembering each other as being brothers and sisters on this path, this great opportunity that we have to do better, rise higher, to love steadily, forgive readily. Today on Facebook, I posted something that said, I'm not here to save the world, but I can start with your heart. I can start with your heart and my heart. Let us extend our hearts to one another. Thinking of someone you might need to soften your heart around. And a prayer of forgiveness. A prayer of compassion and understanding, remembering that we are conduits of a great source of love, a great capacity that we have. As we tap into that capacity, we open our hearts to the willingness to be loving and kind and forgiving and compassionate and caring under all circumstances. We pray to be instruments of peace. We pray to be compassionate responders. We pray to be reflections of goodness and kindness, of mercy. When we look into the mirror and when we look into the eyes of each other. We renew our spiritual commitment to live a life of peace and joy, to find a way every day to wake up knowing that we have 24 hours ahead to do better than the day before, to rise higher, to be willing to self-evaluate the areas within that need a little bit of a shift. So we see a ball of light emanating from the sky, bringing it into our entire chakra system, and then back out into the world. As we move into full moon energy, the night begins to light up as a reminder of the light within, the light that we are, the light that we can extend to one another. So we give thanks for this opportunity to do just that, to be open and willing, to just know that on each and every day we do the best that we can. And on the days that we don't meet our own expectations, we just begin again, start anew. So together we take another deep, unified breath and come into this present moment together. So welcome, happy Holy Thursday. It's good to be together. Today is already mid-January. It's crazy how fast time is just flying by. And we have a full moon growing outside, and on Monday night, Monday the 17th, we're going to have our full moon cleansing ceremony out at the beach, Lauderdale by the Sea on Elmore Drive. I'll be sending out the information again in my newsletter. I'll be posting it on Facebook, and I'll be reminding you on your daily text if you're on my daily text group. If you're not and you want to be, just let me know. I send out a text every single day with either a course lesson or some words of encouragement. So Monday the 17th, we'll be out on the beach. And last full moon, we had the labyrinth walk, and it was amazing. We had a great turnout, we had a great experience, and great energy, and everybody was really loving and enjoying that experience. The people who brought out the labyrinth, it took them like an hour and a half just to put it together. It comes in strips. They did it out on the grassy knoll before the beach where we generally meet. So at the end of the evening, someone came up to me and they said, well, how are you going to beat this next one? And I just don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that it's just going to be wonderful to be together and to be in that the energy of the full moon, and not trying to improve on what somebody else did, because what they did was very unique, and it was a great experience. So let's just have the experience of being together on the beach, and knowing that we are there to be illuminated by the bright light of the moon, which reminds us of who we are, of the light that's within us, and the light that we can extend out to the world. So if we just do that, imagine if we had the opportunity to do that every single night. If it wasn't a full moon, if we had stars, if we could just be together every night in that state of wonder and awe for the beauty of the world that we live in here in South Florida, that we can just get in the car and drive to the beach and be on the beach and under the moon, under the sky. So we'll do that together on Monday. Full moon. So last week we were talking about setting our intentions for the year, getting started with our spiritual intentions, and one of the things we talked about was that we want to feel joyful. We want to enjoy the happy dream, and part of that means that we can move to a place of deep peace and joy within our hearts, so that we can extend that to one another and to be in holy relationships, meaning that our relationships with one another, whether we're intimately close or casually close or just passing in the supermarket, that we can have these holy encounters, that we see each other as kindred spirits, as mighty companions, as brothers and sisters who are reflections of opportunities that we have to be a blessing to one another. And the way that we do that is by continuously challenging ourselves on a daily basis to do our spiritual practices, to have some discipline around that, and to remind ourselves as our mind starts to wander into perhaps some thoughts that aren't so kind, that we can catch them sooner than maybe we did in the past, that we can make the adjustments quicker within ourselves. And it's about really being authentic and true to ourselves. It's not about using scripture or course terms or new age terms or any kind of terminology or memes or something that is just wording. It's about really finding a way to dig deeper beyond that stuff, beyond that superficial stuff, so that we are truly walking and talking in a way that feels like a shift within, a shift born of our actual discipline that is allowing for changes to occur, and that we see that. And I ran across something today that I wanted to share with you, except I don't know what to do with it, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Actually, I'm right here. I'm not going far. Let's see. Okay. Here it is. So there's this guy, and I actually like a lot of what he writes. I just take a little issue with what he wrote this time, so I'm gonna read what he wrote, and then I'll explain to you what I take issue with. His name is Jeff Brown. Maybe a lot of you know him. He does a lot of spiritually related essays, and he wrote a book called Spiritual Graffiti. And in this particular essay, he says he's talking about the possibility of not doing forgiveness, that you don't have to forgive. And this is what he says. This is how he says it. He said, you don't have to forgive every situation. That does not mean you're not spiritual. It doesn't mean that you are unresolved. It doesn't mean you'll come back in the next life having to live it over again. The assumption that forgiving an abuser is the benchmark of a completed emotional and karmic process is a mistake. It's another way of the New Cage movement. Interesting, New Cage, meaning that I guess that we're sort of stuck in a paradigm. I shouldn't say we, because A Course in Miracles is not New Age. It's not even New Thought. It's a separate part. I think it's more of a mysticism path. He says there's another way the New Cage movement insensitively vilifies and gaslights the victims. They shame survivors in their own efforts to bypass their unprocessed victimhood. Those who preach forgiveness above all else are usually profoundly unhealed trauma survivors in denial. Just because you don't choose to forgive doesn't mean you haven't let go. Maybe you just realize it's not essential to your healing and it's not your responsibility. So, as much as I like most of what you say, Jeff, I'm going to have to take issue with this, and I'll tell you why. Because being truly dedicated to a spiritual path doesn't mean you're not acknowledging what has occurred in your life. It doesn't mean that you're pretending you're something you're not. If you have trauma that's unresolved, we talk about it all the time. If you need to be in a recovery, if you need to be in therapy, if you need to work on unhealed trauma, let's do all of that. Let's do all of that so that we can get to this place where forgiveness is an option that we choose so that we can be at peace. And so A Course in Miracles is telling us that that is a tool. It's almost like a quantum physics reality, that there's certain things that will help us to shift and work. It doesn't mean that whatever happened didn't occur. It doesn't mean that you're saying that the behavior was okay, the behavior that caused your trauma was okay. It's not saying any of that. We're not saying any of that. We're saying that for you to be at peace, for you to find peace in your life, and you don't want to be identified with whatever occurred that caused your trauma, even if you still have trauma. And I'll give you an example of something that happened just a few weeks ago with me. I was at a picnic with some friends, and I was standing sort of away from the crowd with someone else, and we were having a conversation. And everyone in the crowd was specifically involved in a spiritual community. So everyone, I would say, is doing their work, their spiritual work, in addition to their daily work, whatever it is we have to do, right? They're dedicated to a spiritual path. So I was speaking with this woman away from the crowd, and we were closer to the road where the cars were going behind us. And there was some guy in an old truck that did that backfire sound. You know, that loud pop sounds like a gunshot. And we both sort of jumped. We both had like this sort of startled reaction. But she didn't come out of it. She went into like this freeze frame, and I saw it. I saw her freeze. And so I acknowledged that, you know, that was scary. That sound, you know, startled us. And she said, yeah. But then she couldn't go into conversation. She couldn't shift back in our conversation. And I realized that she was having a traumatic response. She was having either an emotional flashback or a PTSD response, whatever it was. It had nothing to do with her level of spirituality. It had nothing to do with the fact that she was a part of a dedicated spiritual team. It had to do with she was having this chemical reaction. So it just so happened that I had just learned a new breathing technique that I hadn't tried before, and I told her about it. I said, you know, let's try, if you're willing to try this other technique I just learned, we can like come over here and we can try it and see if you feel better. And she said, yeah, let's do it. So we went over and we did this little few minutes of this breathing thing, and I could see her changing. I could see her eyes started to get more focused, more present in the present moment. And then we were able to get back into our afternoon, our evening or whatever. But whatever occurred in her life that created the trauma that is now living in her amygdala, that is triggered by trauma and trauma memory, we're not saying that that didn't exist. We're not saying to forget it. We're saying that whatever it is, we can see the importance of being deeply true to ourselves and doing the work that we need to do within ourselves so that we can find peace, so we can move into a place of deeper relaxation around whatever it was that did occur that caused that, and it is not about identifying with it anymore. And that's part of the forgiveness process, because when we don't want to forgive, we are constantly in victim mentality. We are constantly reminded, and maybe even telling the story over and over and over again. And so as spiritually dedicated men and women on this path, we want to be so true to ourselves and true to each other, compassionate and kind and loving and open to the realization that all this other stuff has to occur. The healing work around trauma and recovery and personal relationships. Just being able to recognize that somebody is suffering, and in their suffering, I cannot condemn them for not being spiritual enough. What he wrote, I believe, is actually more of a spiritual bypassing, because it's accusing people of not doing and not recognizing the importance of self-identification in healing, in self-identification, in doing your fourth step, being rigorously honest within yourself. And so we do that in addition to our spiritual work. Another thing that occurred, change the names to protect the innocent and the guilty. Two people having an argument, one person, both people have PTSD issues. One person is having a meltdown, the other person standing at the door kind of making fun. Look, I thought you were into Course in Miracles or Buddhism or whatever, just sort of making fun, and leaving, walking out, not applying any compassion, not applying any breathing techniques, not doing anything that might be helpful, but walking out on somebody in the middle of a meltdown, and then going on their Facebook page and saying, I have an open heart and open arms for anyone who's suffering. Now that is a level of spiritual bypassing. That's not what we're doing here. We're not pretending to be kind. We're not pretending to be compassionate. We're not pretending that we don't sometimes show up less good than we want to, less spiritual than we want to. What we're doing is we're looking at the truth of where we are as we are in the present moment and striving with the dedication to do what we need to do so that we can be more peaceful. And more peaceful comes by doing this work in addition to forgiving those things that brought us to this place of pain in the first place. So, I'm going to come down off that perch for a minute and get back to the next thing I wanted to read to you, which is by Ken Wapnick. And Ken Wapnick is talking about specifically these kinds of things that occur in our lives and bring us to this place of wondering, why am I even doing this? Why am I doing this? Where is it going to take me? Why do I have to work so hard? Well, we have to work so hard because we chose this particular playground. We are a multi-generational product of everything that has come before us in humanity. And so this is what he says. Practice with every apprehension, every care, and every form of suffering, whether you perceive it in yourself or you perceive it outside of yourself, or you perceive it in others. To the extent that you really are serious about learning this course and awakening from the dream, to that extent you will practice diligently, day in and day out, minute by minute, hour by hour. To the extent that you're afraid of awakening or resistant to awakening from the dream, then you will still want to play, and to that extent you'll forget, and you'll have long stretches of time not giving the Course or your spiritual work any thought. So as long as we're focused, as long as we're dedicated, then we can start seeing incremental changes as time goes on. And we can start forgiving ourselves. We can forgive ourselves for the times that we don't show up as best we can. And for people like my friend who had her startle freeze, and for the other person who was having her meltdown and got walked out on in it, they have to work on forgiveness within themselves for continuously looking at the outside world. We all have to forgive ourselves for thinking that it's out there, because it isn't out there. Whatever it is may have triggered something, but we still have to do the work internally. That doesn't mean that the next time there's a backfire, she's not going to get scared, because she probably will. And it doesn't mean that the other person has to work a little harder in doing her forgiveness work and the person who walked out on her, because that's a trigger. But as long as we're heightening our awareness of what those triggers are and where we are resisting our forgiveness work, then we're taking a step in the right direction. Did you have someone with a question? No? You were looking very, very intensely.
No.
We're good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, deep breath. As long as we are authentic, as long as we are true to this process, then we don't have to be caged by cliches. If we're using cliches, if we're using the words of any spiritual path as a crutch, as a barrier, as a way to not truly connect with one another, then we're not doing our work as authentically as the Course is asking us to do. To just be real, be raw, be yourself, be true to who you are, and then pay attention to who you are, see who you are. Rigorous honesty, true rigorous honesty. So, with all that being said, we're going to look at a few of the principles. One of the things that I've been doing this week is I've been sending spiritual principles 1 through 50 in increments in the daily WhatsApp text. And I think we're up to maybe 40. You'll get the last 10 tomorrow. So I will look at some of them, and I want to look at them through the FIP edition as well as the Circle of Atonement. Okay, we'll be looking at 15 and 16. So if you want to just take a look at that, if you have your books, I'm going to start with 15 and 16. So in chapter 1, it starts with the meaning of principles and the principles of miracles. So 15 says, in the FIP edition, each day should be devoted to miracles. The purpose of time is to enable you to learn how to use time constructively. It is thus a teaching device and a means to an end. Time will cease when it is no longer useful in facilitating your learning. 16 says, miracles are teaching devices for demonstrating it is as blessed to give as to receive. They simultaneously increase the strength of the giver and supply strength to the receiver. So we're going to compare that to the extended version in Circle of Atonement, big version. So this says, again, each day should be devoted to miracles. Time was made so you could use it creatively and convince yourself of your own ability to create. Time is a teaching device and a means to an end. Since only eternity is real, why not use the illusion of time constructively? You might remember that underneath all are the everlasting arms. You should begin each day with a prayer that says, help me to perform whatever miracles you want today. So think about that. Like every morning when you wake up, it's like, here's my heart, Lord, right? We start with our song. Here's my heart, Lord. How can I be of service today? The prayer of Jabez says, help me to extend my territory, to enlarge my territory being those that I can be of service to. It could be anyone you pass on the street, acts of kindness, acts of compassion. acts of miraculous shifting of your mind about someone. And then asking, what miracles would I perform today? It is not necessarily our decision. Like, we can't say, you know what, today I'm going to go to the gas station and I'm going to miraculously assist someone there. No, we're just open to the guidance that comes as the day unfolds. And so maybe we will be guided to have an active service somewhere, somehow. Maybe we're starting to pass somebody and we almost ignore them, but then we decide to see, okay, how can we be of service? Maybe it could be somebody in the store, somebody in passing, it could be a friend, somebody who calls. You don't know what the opportunity is if you don't open yourself up to receive that opportunity to perform a miracle. What's a miracle? It doesn't mean we're going to part water. It could mean that we're just in the right place at the right time. You know, there's a guy who has a podcast called Buddha at the Gas Pump. And it's a reminder that you can have these spiritual encounters anywhere, at any time. You can be the Buddha at the gas pump. You can be that Lamed Vad Vadazada Kayem, that beam of light that comes to the earth at any given time, and you can step into it and be of service to someone else. And just if you think about that first thing in the morning, like, how can I be of service today? What miracles can I perform today? That could be your daily prayer, your morning prayer. That's your holy instant. It says, I'll tell you, but remember to ask. I'll tell you, but remember to ask. Okay, number 16. Miracles are teaching devices for demonstrating that it is as blessed to give as it is to receive. They simultaneously increase the reserve of strength in the giver and supply the lack of strength in the receiver. And then this is, now remember that part of what occurred in the expansion, for those of you who don't know, this is an expanded version of Course in Miracles. And part of the reason there's an expansion is because there were some notes that were in Helen's notebook that she did not add to the FIP edition. They were edited out. And so the people at Circle of Atonement put them back in. And the reason they were edited out, because Helen thought that maybe they were personal to her. She wasn't quite sure if they were for the general public or if they were specific to her. And so that's why it says here, he's speaking, the conversation is between Jesus and Helen. He says, I have forgiven you, and that means all the hurt and hate you have ever expressed. It is now canceled. I need the children of light now. So let's say that wasn't just for Helen. It's for all of us. It's for you. You are forgiven. Everything, every act of unkindness, any thought of hate, we are needed. You are needed. Your light is needed. And the only way that you can express your light is if you forgive yourself. And don't hold up this shield against the possibility and the capability that you have of being a blessing, a miraculous blessing in the world, because you think you're not worthy. If you think you're not worthy, then you won't expand your light. You won't show your light. You won't be as available to perform miraculous acts of kindness and compassion and caring. So that's why it's telling us to do that forgiveness work. Back to that. Doing the forgiveness work is an inside job, and we have to do it for ourselves so that we are not so resistant. And the resistance comes from not believing in ourselves. So he's saying, let's cancel everything. I need you. The children of light are needed. You who live so close to God must not give way to guilt. Help children because you love them and love God. Help children, God's children, brothers and sisters. Remember, a miracle is a spark of life. It shines through the darkness and brings in the light. You must remember this. Now, it just so happens that there is a correlation between some of these miracle principles and cameos that are done later in the book. Now, the cameos are specifically interactions that are from Helen's journal of things that occurred in her life and how she turned to Jesus during the work that she was doing to figure out, how she's supposed to handle specific situations. So this miracle principle number 16 refers to cameo number 3. So we'll talk a little bit about this cameo. Now, I don't know when we spoke about this cameo before. It was either 2020 or 2021. I don't know because it all runs together. But it was about her interaction with a guy named Wally. So I don't know if you might remember this. But Wally is a guy that she does not have a good relationship with and she doesn't like. You know, we talked about how we all have a Wally, right? We all have a Wally. So think about your Wally. Who's your Wally? So she's upset with Wally. But at the same time, she's a scribe. Remember, this took place over many years. 9 years of going to work every day, living a life, interacting with friends, issues with her husband. But at the same time, she's scribing, right? She's channeling, and she's writing, and she's writing, and she's telling Bill what she's writing, and they're printing it up. You know, the old-fashioned, mimeographs, going shh, 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 to try and make copies. And, that went on for like 9 years. So in the course of that time, she has daily life, things that are happening. So here she's having an issue with Wally. So Wally was a friend of Bill's and who Helen intensely disliked. She didn't just dislike him, she intensely disliked him. At one point she was writing and she said, I feel extremely negative toward Wally. I insist that he's a bad influence on Bill. And I think he's a real menace. Jesus regards this dislike as a key obstacle since he returns to it and she is strictly ordered not to go over the course until she gets over Wally. So don't be going over there writing, your notes on A Course in Miracles. This goes back to what we were talking about before, and teaching how spiritual you are and how, you've got this open heart and open arms when in fact you've got intense dislike over Wally. So he's telling her, do that first. Put everything else down. Put everything else aside. Work on what you need to work on. Do what you need to do. Rise. Rise high. So finally he tells her that the reason she hates Wally is because Wally shares her trait of being embarrassed by love, having obstacles to love. And he expresses it differently than she does. And she is projecting onto him her own self-hatred. In stark contrast to Helen's hatred, Jesus has given her the chalice to give to Wally. This is clearly a reference to the chalice of atonement, the cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper. Drinking from the chalice thus symbolizes taking the atonement onto oneself. In other words, it symbolizes reconciliation. This reconciliation belongs to Wally. And who needs to give it to Wally? Helen. If Wally is showing Helen distasteful behavior that Helen can't stand, it's because Helen recognizes it within herself as well. And so the chalice given to Wally is the opportunity for her to reconcile within herself what her issues are within herself. Now, does that mean that Wally's going to change? Maybe not. We don't know. What matters is that we change. What matters is what we do within ourselves. Because as Wally might be just as annoying tomorrow, but do we have to be annoyed by Wally? That's the difference. That's the work that we have to do. So the chalice is the opportunity, like pass the chalice to you. I'm going to share this with you. I'm going to share this opportunity for us to find peace within ourselves. Peace that I would like to find within myself. So, Helen's got some work to do. Helen's chalice list seems to be a list of people to whom she is supposed to give the chalice of atonement to. People who have lost touch with their chalice due to their own choices and due to Helen's unkindness. Unkindness toward herself and toward others even. It's clear that people in Helen's life are at various stages of achieving their own readiness, so it's really up to her to find her readiness. Helen needs, sorry?
741.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Helen needs to focus on her own readiness so that she can be an instrument of Jesus who is always ready. There we go. Right back to the beginning. What are we working on? We're working on ourselves. We're working on whatever it is within ourselves that needs to be adjusted. Does that mean we're never going to get triggered, that we're never going to have meltdowns, that we're never not going to be unhappy with people? No, that's not what it means. It means that we see it, we recognize it, we make the adjustments within ourselves so that we don't then identify with whatever it is that's out there. We're looking at what it is in here, within ourselves. Helen and Bill both see, now Bill's Helen's friend who's typing up everything. Helen and Bill both seem to have had their own chalice lists, which of course raises the possibility that this is a general phenomenon, not listed to just the two of them, but to all of us. All of us. You must love the children and help them. We must love each other, help each other. You have hated them and you've hurt them, but remember, you once loved them. You are a child of light. You are a child of light. It's not just talking to Helen. It's talking to you, me, all of us, all of you. You are a child of light. Forget the internal interval of darkness that you may have been, because this is your real self. Your real self is the child of light, not those intervals of darkness. We all have intervals of darkness. Maybe, some people say, oh, I had the dark night of the soul. No, we have dark nights, period. The dark night is not of the soul. The dark night is of the ego. The soul has no darkness. The darkness is within our own minds, within our own egos, within our own brains. We do the work to make the shift. We do the dedication. The dedication, the willingness, the practices. Interesting to note, this is a side note, that in this particular essay is when we see Jesus refer to Helen as Azra. He calls her Azra. He says, Azra, remember Azra. And she's like, what? What'd you just call me? Because Azra was an ancient scribe whose name means God's helper. God's helper. And so when people ask, well, why was Helen chosen to be the scribe? It could be because she was a reincarnation of the ancient scribe Azra, also sometimes known as Urza. So that in that cameo, he refers to her as such. Questions?
No.
No? Okay. So a couple things. Remember that Monday is our meeting out at the beach. The other thing is that I was just showing Tanzua that I went through my book collection. Like New Year, you start cleaning things out, and I started looking through books, and I pulled out books that are specifically related to A Course in Miracles. Books by Michael Murdad, Gary Renard, and the Robert Perry. I don't know, there's a bunch of them in there. There's probably like 9. The Way of Mastery is in there, and Course of Love is in there. And so over the next few months, I think I'm going to be presenting some of that material and sharing with you some other perspectives from books that were written around Course in Miracles concepts. So we'll see how that goes as the months unfold. Our final song is a song of praise. I thought we could lift the energy to get mid-month going with Mary Mary. It's got a little bit of gospel music, and then stay for the final wrap up. I found in my going through all this stuff, I found these cards that were given to me at one time. They're called enlightenment cards, and they're thoughts from the disappearance of the universe. And also it's a deck called the I Am card. So they're going to be our final words tonight. So let's hang out and wait for that, and enjoy this last piece of music. Thank you. So yeah, I hope you were dancing in your seat. Just want to praise. I looked at Tanzua's phone, and I saw, Sage, your comment that says, I love my Wally. So that's the spirit. That's the spirit. Let's love our Wallies. Let's love our Wallies and give thanks for the opportunity to look deeper, rise higher, forgive steadily, and love readily. So, to close, these I am cards were given to me by one of my students a few years ago. Let's just see what it says. We'll just pull one out. I am connected. We are connected. I have more in common with others than I realize. I seek commonality with people rather than focusing on outward differences. We are connected. And then this is the Enlightenment cards from Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Bernard. So let's see what this one says. There will always be only two choices: your true home with God and the thought of separation or individuality. So you make the choice. Choose separation or choose to recognize that we are all here together on this path, brothers and sisters, working it out together. I'm glad I have you. Glad I have you. God bless you. See you Monday night at the beach. And if not, I'll see you next week. God bless you.